It's easy to get lost at sea, but when those two things come together, when the vast, mysterious ocean becomes the backdrop for our inner turmoil, that's when the real trouble starts. I want to tell you a story today about a man who got lost at sea and in his mind. He was a sailor, had been sailing all his life, ever since he could walk. He knew the ocean like the back of his calloused hands, yet he never once thought he could get lost at sea. He'd set sail from England to New York with only the wind and the stars for company. But after weeks at sea, the familiar constellations lost their comforting glow. The sky turned into an alien landscape of swirling lights and shadows, and the gentle rocking of the waves became a lullaby of madness. When Harry finally realized he was lost, he began to panic. His compass spun wildly, refusing to settle on a direction. The sun and the moon seemed to have abandoned their predictable paths across the sky. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling around him, and then he saw it, a small dark shape in the distance, growing larger by the minute. Hope surged through him, quickly followed by fear. As the shape loomed closer, he realized it wasn't an island, it was a ship. But it wasn't any ship. It was a ghost ship, a phantom of the sea, a vessel from another time. There were no lights on board, yet its sails were full, billowing in the wind as if propelled by an unseen force. It moved with an eerie grace, gliding over the waves like a spectre from beyond the grave. And then it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Harry alone in the darkness with his pounding heart and his mounting despair. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The salty spray on his face, the cries of gulls overhead, the endless expanse of water stretching to the horizon, all a constant reminder of his isolation. Faces appeared in the clouds, voices whispered in the wind. He saw ships on the horizon, tasted the sweet, tangy flavor of victory on his lips, only to have it snatched away by the cruel reality of his solitude. Then one day, as the sun beat down on the deck and the heat shimmered on the horizon, he saw land. A shout tore through the silence, ragged and raw with emotion. Relief washed over him, so intense it almost knocked him off his feet. He staggered to his feet, blinking against the glare, and there it was, a sliver of green on the edge of the shimmering heat haze. With renewed strength, he steered toward the island, each stroke bringing him closer to salvation. As he pulled himself onto the beach, the sand soft and yielding beneath him, he collapsed, overcome with exhaustion and relief. He was alive, he was on land, and most importantly, he was not alone anymore. But then he looked up and his blood ran cold. The island was deserted, a tiny speck of green in the vast expanse of blue, a tomb in the middle of nowhere. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but he fought it down. He'd come too far to turn back. He explored the island, hoping to find some sign of life, some clue to his whereabouts, something to give him hope. But it was no use. The island was uninhabited, a silent witness to his despair. There was no one to help him, no one to hear his cries, no one to save him from his fate. As the days passed, he grew weaker, the solitude gnawing at his sanity. He talked to himself, sang songs, told stories, anything to keep the darkness at bay. But the darkness always returned, creeping in like a thief in the night, stealing his hope, his strength, his very soul. One night, as the full moon hung heavy in the sky, bathing the island in its eerie glow, he heard a sound, a whisper on the wind, a rustle in the leaves, something. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest, listening intently. Was he losing his mind? Or was someone or something watching him? The sound came again, closer this time, and he saw a shadow moving in the darkness. Terror gripped him, paralyzing him with fear. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but watch as the shadow loomed closer, taking shape in the darkness. Then he saw her, a woman stepping out of the trees, her form slender and graceful, her face hidden in the shadows. She walked toward him, her steps soft and sure, and a chill ran down his spine. Who was she? How did she get there? Was she a figment of his imagination or a harbinger of his doom? She stopped a few feet away from him, and he could see her face now, pale and beautiful, her eyes deep and haunting, her lips parted slightly as if in invitation. She beckoned to him, and he felt an overwhelming urge to follow, to go with her into the darkness. He struggled against the pull, desperate to hold on to his last shred of sanity, but it was no use. He found himself rising, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. He reached out to her, and as their fingers touched, a jolt of energy surged through him. Images flashed through his mind, fragmented and chaotic, a jumble of faces, places, emotions. He saw a storm, a ship, a struggle, a betrayal. And then there was nothing but darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was back on the beach, the woman gone, the island silent. But something had changed. He didn't know where he was or how long he'd been there, but he knew one thing. He was not the same. He felt a profound shift within him, a tearing away of old layers, revealing something raw, something new. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened, but it was a labyrinth of confusion. All he knew was that he was no longer alone. He wasn't sure if it was a blessing or a curse. He didn't know if he wanted to be found. He spent the next few days in a daze, wandering the beach, half expecting to see her again, to find answers in her haunting gaze. But she didn't appear, leaving him alone with his questions and his fear. Then one morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, he saw a ship in the distance. Hope flared in his chest, quickly followed by fear. What if they didn't want to help him? What if they took him somewhere else? Make out the faces of the crew, their voices calling out to him, their hands waving frantically. They were coming ashore, coming to rescue him. And in that moment he understood. The ocean had tested him, broken him, reshaped him. And now it was offering him a choice. Accept the help and return to the world he'd left behind, or stay on the island and face whatever fate awaited him there. The decision was agonizing, like tearing a bandage off a wound. But in the end he chose to go with the ship. As he was pulled aboard, he looked back at the island, at the woman who stood on the shore watching him leave. He didn't know who she was or why she'd appeared to him, but he knew he wouldn't forget her. The ocean had given him a glimpse of something beyond his understanding, something that had changed him forever. When the ship reached port and he stepped off, shaky and uncertain, he knew he was not the same man who had sailed away. The ocean had been stranger than he'd ever known, and in its vastness he'd found something both terrifying and exhilarating. The boundless mystery of the human mind.